Good morning, everybody. Because of the technical difficulties, we were a little delayed. We were trying to put up the correct link on my website, and I am not a webmaster, so I was a little challenged with figuring out how to do that. So good morning, everybody. I also put the link up on my Facebook site, so if anybody else is getting text messages, you can go to Rachel Zenzinger in office and find all the details for the link there. Good morning, everybody. I'm State Senator Rachel Zenzinger. I represent Senate District 19, which is Arvada and Westminster in Jefferson County. And it is a pleasure to be with you this morning. Education is one of my top priorities in the Senate, and I was very pleased to be able to host the governor just a little over a week ago in our district over at the Red Rocks Community College, Arvada campus, where we were able to sign a couple of bills into law regarding education. Namely, there were a couple of bills that were prioritized by the Arvada Chamber of Commerce around offering up college credit for work experience. Also, I had the pleasure of co-sponsoring a bill with Representative Titone on making sure that students' test scores are not placed on their transcripts. We think that this is really important because we all know that our students are much more than a test score, and that was just a carryover from times past when we had a lot of excess testing in our state, and we have worked over the years to minimize the amount of tests. And it's very important that our transcripts that our students are sending off to institutions reflect their grades and not necessarily how well that they do on a test. So those were just a couple of the bills that were passed, and I'm very excited to be able to talk more today about education and the future of education. And with that, I'll just turn it over and we'll see if we can have our guests pick it up where I left off.
Okay.
So you want me to go next, Brianna?
Yeah, I'm just getting the Facebook live stream set up.
Okay. So I'm Tracy Kraft-Tharp, and I'm the state representative in House District 29, which is North and East Arvada, the Jefferson County part of Westminster, and also a candidate for Jefferson County Commissioner, District 1. And so in this last month, I also have had bills signed, had 2 bills signed, had a lot of bills killed, if you remember, well, when we went back, but had 2 bills that were signed. One of those was to extend the Sales and Use Tax Simplification Task Force for another 5 years. Will not be meeting this year because of COVID and the priorities really being around COVID, but will then meet for 5 years after that. The database that we have been developing, the 2 databases, one is a GIS system that tells you the sales tax rates wherever you are. And then the second is a one-stop shop for businesses to be able to submit their sales tax remittance. Those have been launched. We are encouraging home rule cities to jump in and participate. I think we've got, I'm not sure where we're at now, over 20, and others, local municipalities are working on getting on that, and encouraging businesses to use that system. So if anybody has questions about that, there's a web page on the Department of Revenue site. I've been part of 2 demos, so cool. You can put in, it's like Google Earth, you could put in McDonald's and Denver, and it will get you down to the McDonald's in Denver, and it'll show you all the sales tax rates, you know, the special districts and the local municipalities and the state rate. It's really, really pretty cool. So pretty proud that that's something that I've been part of working on. The second bill that I had signed, and my last bill as a legislator, I want to see crying from everybody, please, Scott. See some tears, please, is the Retirement Savings Plan bill. And that bill is really about, people have not been saving for retirement, and so it's encouraging people to save. So when you start working at a new job, your boss is going to say to you, here's your million pieces of paperwork, you know, to come work for us. And we want to encourage you to sign up for a savings program. Does not mandate businesses provide that savings program, although we certainly encourage people that are not doing it to do so. But has people sign up. It will be a state-run system. We've worked closely with the banking industry and with the financial industry around being able to come together and partners on this. So it really is pretty exciting. Unfortunately, I was not able to be at that signing because I was a speaker at the Jefferson County Executive Internship Program, which is young youth. Is that proper language? Young youth who are learning about policy and learning about leadership in our county. And so I was honored to be a speaker at their event and to talk to them about being a legislator and what that means. So exciting month. Thank you. And Brianna?
Yeah. All right, I'm ready now. My name is Brianna Titone. I represent House District 27. That's Arvada and Northern Jefferson County. And I had a few bills that were signed over the last couple weeks. A couple of them were education based. You heard Senator Zenzinger talk about Senate Bill 175. That one came from one of our constituents. So we were really proud of that bill to change the way that test scores appear on transcripts. I also had a bill that changed the behavioral health training requirements for educator licenses. So adding in some time for mental health education, so that way teachers can be more prepared for the mental health issues that they deal with regularly, unfortunately, at the schools to really help the kiddos really get the support that they need. I also had a bill on price gouging. This would give the Attorney General's office and the authority under the Deceptive Trade Practices Act to look into, on an individual basis, any reporting of price gouging that goes on in an emergency situation. So whether it's a flood like we had in 2013, or the pandemic that we're dealing with right now, if people are trying to take advantage of people in those businesses and trying to give higher prices to things that are essential for people's livelihood. We're not talking about Cabbage Patch Kid dolls or anything like that. We're talking about the things that are really essential for people to live their lives. Also had a bill on mental health educational resources. This was sort of another educational related bill. It was a school safety bill that was actually killed, and I had a bill title that hadn't gotten killed yet, and we kind of did a switcheroo on that and put the safe to tell changes in House Bill 1113. So really grateful that we were able to get that bill back onto the law and change those resources for Safe to Tell, which is really going to make important, meaningful changes to how that program works and getting the resources to the people that are effective in that area. So the police aren't called every single time that you call Safe to Tell. We want mental health services and crisis services called when it's appropriate, and the police to be called when it's appropriate as well. And I had another bill that I got signed in recently. It was the ban on the gay and trans panic defense. That one was signed on Monday. And we're the 11th state to ban this criminal defense that people were using. And it was almost unanimous in both chambers. We had only one no vote, so it was a very bipartisan bill. And it just makes sure that LGBT people are not, that their assaulters and murderers don't use this defense to get away with harming people. So I'm really proud of that bill as well. And now I'll just turn it over to our guest. We're going to be talking about ballot initiative 271.
Um, okay, I guess I will get things started here, and we have if the a PowerPoint, I think, that will help us. Um, my name's Lisa Weil. I am the executive director of. We have a different one. Jonna, can you send it to Representative Titone? If you don't. Okay, so while we go here, I am the executive director of Great Education Colorado, which is an organization that has as its vision something that I think everybody on this call has, a vision of a Colorado where every student, no matter where they live, no matter how they learn, no matter the color of their skin, the language spoken at home, that every student graduates ready to lead their best life. And what Great Ed does in the sort of constellation of education groups is that we bring sort of grassroots muscle and coalitions to the fight for better investment in our public schools. With the panel today is Shauna Fritzler, who works with Jeffco, Support Jeffco Kids, is, along with John Levine, the Support Jeffco Kids. And Shauna is also with Jeffco PTA, but I'll let them say what they want. John Levine has been, as I said, a driving force to Support Jeffco Kids, and really an incredible partner in the Great Schools Thriving Communities Coalition, which is what brought the coalition that brought Amendment 73 onto the ballot. And is continuing on working on 271. And we are a coalition, a broad coalition with social justice groups and teachers, superintendents, school board members, other advocates. And lastly is Scott Wasserman, who is the executive director of the Bell and has been a driving force in 271, as well as, and I'll let them speak for themselves, but the Bell is just a leading a leader in advocacy and policy analysis on opportunity for all Coloradans. 271, also known as Fair Tax Colorado, Scott is going to talk about exactly what it is. I'm going to start off talking about the need for this. And Shauna is rightly showing a petition because that's where it's at right now. Broadly, Fair Tax Colorado makes our tax system more fair in ways that Scott's going to tell you by giving most people a tax cut and taxing those at higher income levels at higher rates so that we can invest more in our schools and other important public services. And if we get the PowerPoint up, I'll show you a little bit, but I can tell you the first thing that our legislators didn't talk about because it is, I'm sure, a very painful memory and the most difficult part of the session was deep cuts to all our public services. They had to come up with $3.3 billion in cuts from the budget that they were hoping to pass before COVID. And the impact of that was softened a little bit because there was federal dollars. The CARES Act cushioned the blow for instance, higher education has a 58% cut, 58% cut. That's our community colleges, that's our universities. And it's not going to be felt as deeply this year because of the CARES Act, but next year, the legislature is going to come back and are looking at cuts again for as much as $2 billion beyond what we've already done. And so, okay, awesome. Perfect. So just go two more slides, I think. There's the budget. So looking forward to next year, and Senator Zenzinger is going to be in the middle of this, being on and I believe the chair of the JBC. They did all kinds of things. They used cash funds, one-time dollars to make things not as bad this year. And even then, our school districts, and Jonna and Shauna will talk about this, are dealing with significant cuts at the same time that there are increases to their costs in keeping kids safe and figuring out how to have smaller class size if they're at whatever point that kids are actually coming into schools. You think about all the costs of over the years, the schools have been reducing their janitorial staff. And that's exactly what has to be increased now. There are capital costs, there's curriculum costs. So at the same time that those costs are increasing for COVID, the CARES dollars are going to disappear, and all the ways that the legislature was really incredibly creative in trying to prevent cuts this year, those are going to be not available. So we can go to the next slide. Every part of our state budget could tell a similar story to this: higher education, transportation, public health, health insurance, foster care. In all cases, our budget, our state got hit in the Great Recession, and we never actually recovered. So what this graph shows is how far behind we are. This is just about education. How far behind just keeping up with inflation plus the new kids in the schools we are. This is how far we're behind where we started the Great Recession in 2008. And you can see the really scary part about this graph is how far we fell below. The recession was in 2008, 2009. The worst cuts to our schools, we were spending $1 billion less in inflation adjusted dollars in 2012 and 13 and 13 and 14 than we did before the recession. And the worst years are always 2 to 3 years after the recession. That's when the federal dollars disappear. And so you can see that we very slowly inched our way up until we were still over $500 million behind where we were in 2008. That kind of spending money, it was still about $600 per student behind, and we were just getting back. And now the budget that was just passed without the CARES Act is now that red bar. We are farther behind than we ever were, and the CARES Act money is helping now, but it ain't going to be there for the future. And so if we don't do something now, the cuts that we're talking about for our schools are unbelievable. Again, Sean is pointing out the petition because we have until just a couple weeks left, really a week of intensive signature gathering to put something on the ballot so the voters of Colorado have an opportunity to weigh in on this, which they will not if we can't get enough signatures. And it's a tough road to do this during COVID. I will just, well, let's see, if you go to the next slide, okay. The next slide is going to be the impact on Jeffco, but I just want to put this context in that if you had asked me 5 months ago, I would have told you we will absolutely get on the ballot. There is no question that we're going to get on the ballot because we did it with Amendment 73. We got over 100,000 volunteer signatures, and then came COVID, which was not just a curveball. That was like a bean to the head. And all our people, the whole school system, you know, the school events, the people's fair, all the things that bring people together disappear. And so we've been figuring out, how do we do this? How do we get people to do this safely? Our most important issue is keeping the safety of our people. How do we do this without a ton of money? Because we're a volunteer-driven coalition, and so it's tougher to get on the ballot now, and we only have days to do this. It's a tough climb, but if we get on, and I'll talk about this in a minute, we'll win. Can we do it? It's up to every person on this call to do our best and be able to look back and say we did everything we could to make sure that our decisions about what the budget looks like next year were made by voters, not by default. So I'm going to move this over right now, just talking about the impact of the cuts, and Shauna and John are going to sort of walk through what it means for Jeffco.
Thanks, Lisa. Real quickly, this first slide, we want to tell you that thanks to the JBC and the legislature moving around a lot of things, unfortunately, a lot of programs were unfunded because they had to make sure that money went to pay for our total program, because education is a constitutional requirement by the legislature. At any rate, Jeffco ended up with about $30 million budget reduction this year. And thanks to the federal CARES dollars, which came to about 46 million, they've kind of, they've done the same thing as the legislature. They've moved around, transferred some funds from different funds within the district. They've taken out some programs that won't be funded. And Shauna can tell you from experience as I can, in the many mill bond campaigns that we've done, once a district has to cut a program, and quite often once a district has to let go of staff, it doesn't come back. And if it does, it comes back very, very slowly. The other thing here we wanted to point out, as Lisa I think already mentioned, is those CARE dollars are one-time dollars. So any of the districts' use of those CARE dollars is really, really limited. In the next slide, one of the things at their last board meeting, the board and the cabinet talked about was the fact that while they've been able to use the CARE dollars to help get them through and minimize a lot of the cuts, there's a very grim outlook for future years. They specifically referred to FY22 when there won't be any CARES dollars that will be able to help them. They will have used their reserves to help pay for that. And right now, before a lot of other things happen, they are anticipating that there will be a $40 million short, where $40 million expenses over revenues. And please do take a look at the unknowns that every district will have to deal with, and that is they still don't know what the real costs are going to be for restarting school. Trying to purchase PPE, there's so many things that are up in the air. They still don't know what changes they're going to be to enrollment. If they lose students, they lose dollars. There's still a chance that there might be a mid-year rescission from the state. Everybody's watching what happens with the Gallagher repeal. If that doesn't happen, schools statewide lose almost $500 million. And of course, with COVID, we don't know what's going to happen with school closures. Next slide. One of the things we want to make sure everybody understands here, though, is that with Fair Tax Colorado, Jeffco gets somewhere between $53.5 million and $89.1 million annual ongoing revenue. And with that, 95.75% of Jeffco households will see a tax decrease, 4.25% will have a tax increase. Next, whoever.
Okay, I think.
Hang on. I'm sorry, Scott, I was muted. Actually, Scott, take it away.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Good morning, Jeffco. It's great to be with you. My name is Scott Wasserman. I'm the president of the Bell Policy Center. I think many of you know us. We have been, focused on this issue for the last 20 years, since we were created. And I honestly would say, before I get into the policy itself, that I really do believe that the path to fiscal reform does go through tax fairness. And I'm going to explain why I think that is. But as Lisa, I think the slide was up a second ago, I mean, we have been poll testing this for quite some time. We had polls in the field prior to COVID. We had polls in the field after COVID. And you just see an unmistakable near 70% level of support for a tax increase, for a marginal tax increase on our top 5% of wealthiest Coloradans. And in particular, what I think is important is that you also see that support in contrast to the budget cuts. There's one very specific question that we asked, which is, would you prefer to see devastating budget cuts? That's not how we worded it in the poll. Or would you prefer us to change our tax code so that people making over $250,000 paid more? And overwhelmingly, 2020 voters said we would prefer to see that change. So Representative Titone, if you wouldn't mind clicking past this slide. Let's go past this slide. Enter. Okay, so what is our proposal? Okay, one more slide. I apologize for my pandemic puppy in the background. Okay, so what are we doing? So first and foremost, if Initiative 271 passes, it will mean probably not $2 billion. The Blue Book language that we got is an estimate based on pre-COVID numbers. So if you factor in a recession, we're probably looking at something like $1.7 billion for our state, and that's permanent revenue, and it's not one-time revenue. And so, in the context of what Lisa shared earlier, that's a really big deal. And I will just share that the things that are going on are not just related to education. Colorado's budget, when you adjust for inflation and population, only just began to recover prior to the downturn that we're experiencing now. The big innovation in this measure, because we have had a proposal in Amendment 73 to move to a graduated income tax, is that this actually cuts taxes for 95% of Coloradans. I think what's shocking, if you're not shocked by this figure, let's talk. You can cut taxes for 95% of Coloradans. You can move to 4.58%. And then raise taxes on the top 5% of Coloradans and get to $2 billion and not really do very dramatic things. And the reason is because 95% of tax filers in this state have a taxable income of under $250,000. I think that's shocking for people. And I know that for a lot of my friends, those who make over $250,000 are shocked that they are in the top 5% of income earners. So when we talk about the wealthiest Coloradans, that's what we're talking about. And there's probably a whole other conversation to be had about understanding where people fall in terms of income, but we won't have that today. Then what we do is we create 3 new marginal tax brackets for income levels over 250. I'll go over those in a second. I think it's just worth pointing out that we would not be alone, right? Over 30 states have marginal tax rates, just like our federal tax code. And the reason we don't have it here in Colorado is in large part because people don't know that Tabor very explicitly prohibits different tax rates for different incomes. So Tabor does a lot of things. It's not just a vote on your taxes. So to do this, we got to go into the Constitution. We got to delete that clause from the Constitution, which is why we need to, in order to qualify, we need to be in every single Senate district around the state, unlike other measures that are currently trying to get qualified. Half of the revenues would go to recruit, retain, and pay teachers and student services staff. And then the other half would go to address the needs of the growing population and economy. I will simply say this, with every ballot measure, there is a wonderful debate that happens. Do you want to get really specific or do you want to be really general? If you're really general, people say, well, where's the accountability? It's a blank check. How can we trust our government? If you get really specific, then you get entities that say, but I'm not in there, why should I fight for this? And I think with this, what we tried to do is really strike a balance, recognizing how acutely the cuts have hit education and how dire the situation is even before COVID, but also allowing for the fact that, the other half of the money, we've got roads to maintain and build. We've got higher education institutions that need to be maintained. All of that, I think, can safely fall within that other half of the dollars. Slide. Thank you. Okay, great. So I think this is not just about politics, right? This measure is grounded in policy. What you're seeing here, there's a couple different charts that are floating around, but all this data comes from the Colorado Department of Revenue. And in their tax expenditure report, and there was a great article on this in the Colorado Sun several months ago. Right now, if you look at the total tax burden that Colorado families are wrestling with it or paying, I don't want to say, I'm not making a judgment. Bottom line is, if you look at the total tax burden across income tax, sales tax, property tax, local taxes, you take that all together, what you see is this chart. And this chart is really disturbing. It's very similar to what we see around the country, is that you see that lower income families and even middle income families are paying a higher percentage of their income than wealthier households are. So this is really important because when we say that the tax code is unfair and inadequate, right, this is what we mean. Why should our lower and middle income families in this state be paying a greater share of their income in taxes? And might I add, when the tax code is inadequate, right, when we cut education, when we don't have money for higher education, those are additional costs that lower and middle. So if you ask me, and it's the view of the Bell Policy Center, that low and middle income families are getting hit twice, because not only are they paying a greater share of their taxes, right, but they're getting less for that money. Slide. So what we are proposing is that we change that. And by moving to our proposal, which I'll talk about in a second, this is what that chart then begins to look like. By doing a very minor tax cut for those at the 95% in this state, and then gradually through 3 margins raising taxes on our wealthier households, we can begin to get more equity and more fairness in our tax code. And people will start to see the benefit of us not having to make these cuts and not raising their personal costs. So let's talk about the proposal real quick. All right, so here's what this looks like, right? And I would argue everyone actually gets a tax cut here, because it's your first $250,000 of taxable income that's cut. So even if you're making $1 million, the income that you are filing below $250,000 will experience a tax cut. For the income that you make between $250,000 and $500,000, will move to 7%, and it's just that amount, right? That's how that works, okay? Then 500 to $1 million, we go to 7.75, and then for $1 million and up, your marginal tax rate will be 8.9. But I want to point something out. If you're making $1 million a year, good for you. Your effective tax rate, right? Your blended tax rate, if you add up all those margins, comes out to be around just under 6.5% total tax rate on that income. I want to make one other point, because there are a lot of people who say, well, what about small businesses? Because a lot of small businesses file their income through pass-through. We've done some analysis based on the Department of Revenue figures. 80% of business income filed in the state through pass-through is under $250,000 a year. So I think that the facts really matter. I think by extension, many people who file as a pass-through entity for small business income would experience, in fact, a tax cut under this measure. So that will come up, and I think it's really important that we actually talk about that. So when you make these changes, you get the cumulative effect that we've been talking about. I think we've got one more slide. What is the next? Okay, so I mean, in essence, that's what we're proposing. I'd be happy to, take any questions about the policy, or just move along and then take questions at the end. But I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about the proposal.
Well, thank you, Scott. It looks like right now we do not have any questions in the Q&A, but if people think of any questions about the policy, just feel free to type it up, put it in the Q&A, and we'll go back to Scott, and or Lisa can also probably address the question as well. So let's see, at this point, why don't we turn it over to our last speaker, either Shauna or Jonna?
Either one. Representative Titone, would you mind putting those other slides with the locations up there also? Oh. So, hi, I'm Shauna, and thank you for getting up on a Saturday morning and joining us. And I actually did my hair for you today. We're so lucky. So Senator Zenzinger, Representative Kraft-Tharp, and Representative Titone have agreed to co-host signings today and tomorrow with us. So immediately after this call, and you can go to the next slide right there. This is my home. So, whoops, the one backwards. There we go. That's my home today, 12 to 3. And you'll also see that my phone number is up there. I put a link in the comments there that has all of this information, including my cell phone number. Please wear a mask. So I do take care of family that is at risk. but I'm available to you. If you can't meet those times, then you can text me to arrange another time, but it's very important that you get to sign. Now, if you can't come today, Representative Titone, if you go to the next one, our lovely representatives and senator have also agreed to co-host tomorrow, so also within their district area. And this is at my parents' house, so I will be signing on the other side of Arvada. So I am so very close to you in all those places. And again, my cell phone is available to you. Please, please, please sign a petition. It's very important.
And I just want to point out to everyone that if you can't get to any of these locations this weekend, you can go to Fairtax Colorado, and they have a long list of folks around the area who are carrying petitions. You can check out, you can tag me on Facebook. I have a list of folks who are carrying petitions. And if you know anybody around the state that you have friends maybe in other parts of the state, make sure you let them know that they need to sign this, and they too can go to Fairtax Colorado and find a location to sign. This is that's full court press on.
Thanks, Jonna. Before we go back to Shauna, Scott, we did have someone ask a question in the chat box. Don Parsons wants to know, will this new tax bypass Tabor?
Yeah, so let's just talk very quickly about some of the interactions with Tabor. So first and foremost, it does amend Tabor by deleting the provision in Tabor that prohibits different tax rates for different levels of income. So that's one interaction with Tabor. The tax rates, I should say the tax rates are statutory. And I think that's really important because first of all, you know, I would argue that the tax cut itself, you know, what legislature, I would argue is going to raise that tax rate from the cut. The other thing is that if we come to the conclusion that, wow, we have really soaked the rich to the point of crippling our economy, the legislature can always make downward adjustments on those rates. So those are statutory. And then as Lisa pointed out in the Q&A, yeah, this is debruced revenue, meaning that this revenue can be kept and used for state services.
So there is this question about, is it a state initiative, other citing sites around the state? Absolutely. And in these last days, we are doing our best. We have to, because it's a constitutional amendment, to take out that prohibition on a progressive income tax. We have to get a certain number of signatures in every single Senate district. And that is tough. We did it last time with Amendment 73. In fact, our volunteers were the first to qualify a measure with the new requirements. Somebody else isn't going to fix this. And so we will be, it looks like my internet is unstable. We will be putting out on that face, we put the fairtaxcolorado.org website in the chat. Please go there and you can find out where the closest place to for you to sign a petition. You can also set up your own, just pop up like Shauna's doing, just safely 6 feet behind a table with clean pens. And we will promote, if you want it to be public, we will let people know where they can go. We've got 58, I believe, signing stations today. We need that many every day. We need to have people have easy access to this. The consequences are enormous. We are a state that is starting at $3,000 per pupil behind the national average. That is starting before COVID as the literally least competitive teacher wages in the nation. That's where we're starting. We cannot afford this. And
well, I'm looking, oh, sorry, Lisa.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm looking at questions that are coming up on Facebook Live. So where are we at? What's the status of the petition gathering and the signatures? And is there a need for 2% from each Senate district?
yes, there is that need for 2% because it's an constitutional. And once we finish that in all 35 districts, there's still a need for just bulk signatures. I'm not gonna, I won't lie. This is a heavy lift. We were hit by COVID, and then we planned, many of you may have even signed a single signature form that was made possible. The governor did it with his emergency powers, issued an executive order creating ways to do a single subject, a single line signature form that somebody else had to and we had planned to reuse that to overcome COVID, and the Supreme Court shut us down on that. And by that time, paid signatures were extraordinarily expensive. And so it's up to us. We are doing this. We are sprinting to the end. This next week is absolutely critical. Keep an eye on that website. Keep going to Fair Tax Colorado to see if there's a petition place near you, or if you have relatives around the state, make sure that they know. We are making progress. We have over 3,000 petitions out right now. We are trying to get them all back in next weekend. So we have enough petitions out. We in the right places. If they all come back with signatures, we can do this. But it is a heavy lift, and we need everybody to make sure you're on Support Jeffco Kids, because Jonna and Shauna keep everybody to step up. We will need a miracle, but we can do it.
So there are quite a few people that are posting in the chat that they have petitions and people can sign them. We also got have a message in the chat from Parker Brown needing to coordinate with somebody. So if one of you petition people could look at that chat and his phone number, that would be helpful, and take care of Parker.
That's fantastic. And for all of those you folks who are posting that you have a petition, if you are willing to do something that you would let us publicize so that people can go, whether you're going to a coffee shop or in front of your own home, if you are willing to make that public, the best thing you can do is go to fairtaxcolorado.org. You'll get a pop-up that says, and Representative Titone, maybe it's worth going on your, showing people that website and just going to fairtaxcolorado.org so they can see what it looks like. There'll be a pop-up, and it's, well, let's just go through it. And here it comes. So you'll see that immediately you start seeing the website, but then it's going to put a pop-up. And if you go to, click on safely sign a petition, or actually at this point, if you can't, go to get involved, sign a petition. You can get in touch with a mobile petition carrier. We are doing exactly what Parker asked us to do and figure out a way to get a petition to you. And then find a signing location near you. So there's that link, find your nearest location now, go down, the link is actually below that, and there you go. And this shows you all the places, including all the ones that Shauna and Jonna talked about. First are the places you can sign anytime, and keep going down. And you'll see the signatures of places for today. Here's Saturday the 18th. We got Arvada, Conifer. Senator Story is doing 3 pop-ups this weekend. There's Golden. Send this link to your friends so that they know where they can go. We have places in Lamar, La Junta, Rocky Ford, Montrose. It's great, but you can see how much is in, you've got Lakewood. There's so many places near you. There's some tomorrow, but we need to populate this list for the rest of the week. So Representative Titone, if you can go back up to the top, at the very top. So this is my message back to folks who are saying, I've got a petition. At the very top of that link, it says, are you hosting your own pop-up? Click here to let us know. And that's where you can tell us these hours during the week, this is where I will be, and we're going to be pushing this link out big time. We'll put it onto that webpage, and we will be letting people know to come to you. So if you are willing to be public, that's awesome. That's how you do it.
So
So
we
Parker
got,
Brown is taken care of, but there's a question on the chat about who has petitions in Summit County. And Jonna, Shauna, or Lisa, can you respond to that on the chat?
I will find the person to get in touch with is Lisa Webster. And
also, we have another question in the Q&A,
let me
and I
chat.
think this would be probably for Scott. The question comes from Eric. Any increase to school district budgets would need to go through the state budget process if this initiative passes, correct?
I would defer to our school finance experts, who could probably answer that better. Senator Zenzinger, maybe. Actually, you could answer this.
So we do come up with the state share for our portion, the state's portion of funding for schools. And if we are collecting more tax revenue, then obviously that would have an impact on our ability to increase funding towards education. As far as local school districts go, because this is a state initiative, I don't believe that the money would go directly to local school districts through their budgets. However, the local school districts do, when they put together their budgets, take into consideration the state share. Then they know how they're able to adjust their budgets for their portion. So I have a question though, that I don't think has been addressed yet, that I think people might be interested in knowing more about, which is what is the impact of the Gallagher amendment on school budgets next year, and is that something that we should also be on the lookout for?
Sure, I'm happy to talk about that. And I know, Senator, that you could answer this easily. But the answer is that Gallagher has a formula that keeps the ratio between how much is spent, how much revenue property taxes come from business property and how much from residential. And the impact is that when the value of business property drops, then the residential rate, the percent of the value of our home we even pay taxes on, has to drop in order to keep this formula. And I won't, it's complex and it's ridiculous to have so many formulas driving our budget. But what will happen is that the residential assessment rate is because business property values are plummeting because of COVID. In order to match that, residential assessment rates are going to drop. We started off in 1982 with 21% of the value of our homes being taxed. You can think of like your dining room, your kitchen, and maybe a family room that percent is taxed. It's now 7.1%. So it's like a bathroom is being taxed. That's what the residential assessment rate is. If that drops, which is expected significantly, that's the $500 million that Jonna referenced earlier that will disappear from property taxes. And of course, property taxes are the first money into our schools. And so there is something on the ballot. I don't know the number of it, but the Gallagher amendment, it will be, there are changes to it that will keep the residential assessment rate where it is right now. If we don't do that, there will be another $500 million.
Right, Lisa, I think your internet is unstable again, and every time I get that message, I try not to take it personally, like I am personally unstable, but
education, because it's just that ballot measure. I'm going to try a different, but if anybody, there are 3 people on this call, or 10 people on this call who can answer that question as well. So if Senator Zenzinger, I know you can pick it up.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa. I think I had some difficulty towards the end there with your response. I think we had some internet issues, but I am just want to make people aware that there will be another initiative that will be on the ballot that will be addressing Gallagher. And I think that it's important for people to know we might try and pull together a town hall on that topic as well, so that we can kind of dive into some of the policy considerations, because it is quite complicated. This particular issue, though, I think what it all boils down to is the fact that before COVID struck, the state of Colorado was already pretty much towards the bottom of school funding. And we truly have not gotten out of the woods yet with regard to COVID and its impact on our economy. And I definitely encourage everyone just to take a look, go to the materials, educate yourself. If you have further questions, I do know that our panelists are very eager to meet with people one-on-one, possibly not in person, but I know that they'd be willing to talk to anybody, get on the phone, email. So if a question comes up later, if you get into a Facebook argument with somebody and you think, oh, I don't know the answer to that, please reach out to any one of our guests. I think you can find all of their contact information either on the website for Great Education Colorado or for the Bell Policy. I believe that both Lisa and Scott's information is there. We're also throwing up their emails into the chats as well. And if you want to get a hold of Shauna or Jonna, I know that they are so easy. They publicize their information everywhere all the time. And so I think that everybody has an opportunity to assist you and to get you what you need so that you can make a good decision and help us get this across the finish line. We are in the last few minutes here, so we wanted to wrap up very quickly. I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today before I hand it over to my co-sponsors. If you have any questions of me, you can go to my website, which is rachelforcolorado.com, and my email address is rachelforcolorado@gmail.com, or you're also welcome to give me a call. My personal phone number is also on my website anytime. And thank you so much for being with us this morning, and we apologize for any inconvenience you may have experienced.
Well, that's the royal rule. You got to unmute yourself. So just want to say a special thank you to everybody for joining us this morning. Our panelists, thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday to be able to join us. All the people who attended this, both on Zoom, but also on our Facebook Live, thank you so much, and so sorry for the technical problems. Good thing we have Brianna Titone, who is a technical expert, to be able to figure things out pretty quickly. So you can reach me at tracyforjeffco@gmail.com, Facebook at tracyforjeffco. And I just want to take a moment and recognize some of our candidates and electeds who have joined us. So former Senator Evie Hudak has joined us on Zoom. Jerry, our treasurer, Jerry Dutilio, Jefferson County Treasurer, has joined us on Facebook Live. Thanks, Jerry. Catherine Scully, our Westminster City Councilor, has joined us on Zoom. And then we have House District 29 Democratic candidate Lindsay Doherty, Jefferson County Commissioner District 2 Andy Kerr, and Carla Esser. And Carla Esser is our school board candidate who has joined us on both Zoom and on Facebook Live. And then also I want to say a special hello and congratulations to Miss Colorado America, who was crowned this last week, our own Juliet with the Westminster Chamber, and who has joined us on Facebook Live. And we want to say a big congratulations. We're very proud of you, and thanks for bringing Westminster to the national front.
And I'll just finish up real quick with my information. You can find out about me at briannaforcolorado.com. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter, Brianna for Colorado and Brianna for CO. If you're watching on Facebook Live, you're watching on my Facebook page. Be sure you hit like before you leave. And if you want to send me an email, rep.brianna.titone@gmail. And you can always give me a call, 720-213-6660. If you're in the Candelas area, let me know. I have a petition and there's still some room left. I can meet you someplace in the park or whatever. Happy to help you out with that.
Carla Esser, I said she was running for a school board that was just a shorthand. It's state school board. So state of Colorado school board representing us. So I've been reminded in the chat to clarify that. So thank you. You want to close us out, Rachel?
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And don't forget to sign your petitions. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Come on,
Bye-bye.
song, Rachel.
Thank you.